Hello again, and welcome back to Legally Cited. This is Jesse, and I am back for another episode of Growing Up Illegally Cited. And this time, we are back to tackle another topic, another question that people commonly have. In one of the previous episodes, I had talked about how I got into basically my day jobs that I've had. How do I become a assistive technology trainer or an assistive technology specialist? So we covered that kind of angle from the more productivity, education, employment side. Now we'll talk a little bit more about how I got into game accessibility and game consulting, that kind of accessibility consulting. And again, I know people are probably looking for like oh, this is a reasonable, fairly straightforward path that you could take to do that kind of work. And again, I'm going to say there really isn't an easy answer. There really isn't a straightforward answer. Um, I will tell you in this video, just like my other one, I will tell you my experiences and sort of my path, the way I got here. And then I'll also kind of mention a few things that I think you really, a few skills, um, just a few aspects that you really need, I think, to not only get into the field, but to be able to do it well, and to be able to kind of get people to notice you a little bit. And trust me, I'm no expert in a way either because I'm still learning constantly. I'm still fairly new at this. I mean, yes, I've been doing the accessibility thing forever in some fashion, but as far as game accessibility, yeah, I've been doing it for several years now, but it's not my full-time job. It's kind of goes in streaks, but when I do it, I enjoy it and it's fun. So this time I will start out with sort of my path, and then we'll get into, I think, some of the things that I would suggest that people have and skills that people may need to get into it. So, as I mentioned in my gaming episode, I grew up playing video games a lot, or I tried to whenever I could because I was fascinated by them. Um, Computer games, console games. I really forgot to kind of talk about handheld games, but I remember my friend had a Game Boy, and yeah, the screen was tiny. The contrast was often really bad. You had to be in great lighting, but the Game Boy was still pretty cool. Like I remember playing Super Mario Land, and it's like, dude, wait, I can play a handheld version of Super Mario Brothers games like in the palm of my hand. That's cool. And then I discovered things like Tetris, and oh Lord, the amount of hours I've played Tetris over the years, man. And I still love the Game Boy version. But yeah, I mean, portables, arcade, although I never really had much money to go to arcades, I would usually kind of just watch other people play. But yeah, I mean, I would try to, and I would try a little bit of everything. I mean, I still do. I still have my favorite genres. But I mean, I would stick to a lot of side scrollers, a lot of action games, and then like when you hit the PC era and we hit like Doom and Wolfenstein, I mean, I was a first person shooter fan from then on. Um, but I mean, I played some, everything from sports games and puzzle games, racing games. I mean, I love the original Tecmo Bowl. I remember playing a lot of Blades of Steel back in the day, with a really muffled announcer. Uh, remember that? Hits the pass, and then, or he would just always do this commentary, but it was so muffled you could barely almost uh, tell what he was saying. But it was just fascinating to have speech in a Nintendo game. So I played a lot of games, and you eventually kind of learn what you like. You know you learn what games are good and bad. I mean, we rented some that were just terrible, and I remember what some of the first times where it's like, oh, yes, I'm fascinated by video games, but sometimes these are just bad, or I just really don't like them. Um, So I played a lot of video games. And of course, like many people that grew up in the 80s and 90s, there was always some sort of a thought of, I would like to make video games when I grow up. And so, I love computers, I love technology, I loved games. So I thought, well, maybe I'm going to be a computer programmer. Yeah, okay, that sounds like a thing that people do, because I'd heard about it some. So for the longest time, that's what I thought I would do after high school. Again, growing up in the middle of absolute nowhere, and growing up in the 90s, we really didn't have the internet that we do now. We didn't really use dial-up internet until the early to mid 90s. And so it's not like we could just go online and look up videos or tutorials or websites on how to program. I know people were using, like, you'd have get these technology books where they give you code in the back. You type in that code and then you could learn it and modify it and whatever. But I never got any of those books. And even if I could, I really couldn't read them because they weren't really accessible to me. So that was really never my thing. I just played a lot of video games whenever I could. In college, like I said, I took a couple of programming classes and some tech classes. I did well in technology, but um, yeah, as far as programming, I was not good at it, and I really didn't enjoy it like I thought I would. So I had to look for something else. Um, in one of my classes that I had to make a web page because we were learning some HTML. So I made a little web page, and around that time, I was like, again, I was just really, I had broadband for the first time. I was just going freaking everywhere on the internet and just looking up anything and everything that I was interested in: games, movies, music, hobbies, just anything, tech, and just whatever I could find. And that's when I discovered things like IGN, GameSpot, um, just all kinds of different websites. And I thought, well, if I can't make video games, maybe I can write about them. I could do this. So that website that I created for the class, I threw together like a main page. I put a couple reviews up there. I might have put a couple previews up there. And I'm like, I'm going to make myself, so I'm going to start this for the class. But my intent was, I'm like, I'm going to continue this after the class because that way I can, it was kind of this idea of I could build this resume in the background to say, like, look at my portfolio. And I could, if I ever saw like a job opening for one of these websites, I could point them to that website and go, hey, these are some of the articles that I wrote. These are some of the reviews that I wrote for games. This was around the N64 era. And so I didn't really expect anyone to see them, but it was just, like I said, it was like an online portfolio that I could use. Somehow, somebody discovered the website, which was really kind of funny because I got an email. I remember checking my email one day and I got an email from somebody and they said, hey, I found your website and I read your reviews. Hey, we would like to, we're a Nintendo website and we would like to have you write articles and reviews for us. So I was like, okay, sure, let's try that. And so I did, and it wasn't a paid gig, but again, we were all doing it kind of just for the same reason. We love video games. We thought it might be a way to get into games journalism, into the gaming industry. Um, I mean, a bigger website, if we grew it enough, it's like, oh, well, look at this. We're legit, man. We have like 3 to 5 writers and we write reviews and previews and articles and features, and we have our own forums, which we did. Um, that's what we were doing back then. And the first one I ever wrote for was called Nintendo Eye. I think you can find it on the Wayback Machine, God forbid. And so yeah, that was like around the late 90s, early 2000s. Unfortunately, that site went under a couple years later. Um, but somehow, and I don't even remember how I came in contact with the people at the next website, but there was another website called Nintendo News Online. And so they asked me if I would write for them. So I did. I wrote for them for a couple of years. And that was really fun. Again, it was reviews, previews, articles. We had forums, all that kind of stuff. And both of those, like this is when E3 was just really hopping, man. Like we wanted to go to E3. That was like if we could become legit enough and to be able to try to send all of us or some of us to E3, like man, if we could go there and like get a look at these games and actually truly cover them ahead of time, that would be so cool. Never happened, but that's kind of what we were doing. So I did that, and around the time I finished that site, I had graduated college at that point, and I had my undergrad degree. And the problem with that time period was after college, I was looking for work and I was unemployed for like 3.5 years. It was a really rough time because I was dead poor. I was desperately trying to find work, desperately trying to live independently, without getting evicted, without, trying to pay my bills and everything. And like I said, it wasn't for lack of trying. I would apply for jobs. I would get interviews. I took it very seriously. I did it like several hours a day. And so, especially once that website kind of folded as well, once Nintendo News Online folded, I said, well, I'm not going to look for another one right now unless I can find like a paid one that I can try to apply for. Like I said, if IGN or GameSpot or Joystick by then, or like a bunch of other websites were out by then. Yeah, if I could find a paid gig maybe, but like I said, I was looking for stuff for work through what I had done through college, like I got a college degree, I want to use it. Um, so yeah, I kind of took a break from gaming stuff. Like I played games still as much as I could, even though I couldn't afford them very much. Um, so I played games, but I never really did anything writing with them or advocacy, or like I said, that wasn't even really a thing yet. And it really wasn't until the YouTube channel that's when it picked up in 2012. By now I've told the YouTube story, the whole, hey, we got hooked on Minecraft. We put some of our work up there, some of our tours of our projects, and then I just started doing the spotlight videos. I've told that story a few times. um, and for the first couple of years, three years at the very least, it was crickets. You got nothing. I was lucky to get 5, 10 views a video. Like 5 views, I'm like, woohoo, we're big now. 2015 is where things really started to kind of piece together. And I may have already told this too. I know I told it in a recent interview I did for another YouTuber. Shout out to Mad Max. And so I had the YouTube channel going. I went to the CSUN Assistive Technology Conference in 2015, and I met an individual by the name of Ian Hamilton, Sir Ian of Hamilton. And like many people who probably are doing this work right now, Ian was probably one of the catalysts to get us started. He's like, like Mad Max says, he's the OG, he's the original, he's the man. But I attended one of his sessions that was specifically on game accessibility because at that time it was kind of just starting to become a thing. And I thought, I'm already doing this YouTube channel stuff. That is the angle that I'm currently taking to separate myself from the hundreds and thousands of other YouTube tech and gaming channels out there. I am doing it from a blindness, low vision, legally blind perspective. And when I started the channel, again, to my knowledge, there weren't that many people out there that were doing it. That I knew of anyway, that were blind or visually impaired or even with a disability. So that was kind of my niche. And I attended his session. We talked a little bit afterward. We emailed some back and forth over the next while. Gave me some good ideas, just gave me some good thoughts, found me a couple of opportunities, saw what I was doing, doing the YouTube thing. And he was the really one that really kind of, like I said, kicked me into high gear of like, maybe I could turn this into something. By then I was starting to become really more active on Twitter. Twitter's my primary platform. I could really give a crap less about Facebook. So I had Facebook at the time, but never used it. But Twitter was my thing, and that's where a lot of blind people and people with disabilities and stuff, and game industry people as well. That's where a lot of people were and still are, despite what Elon is trying to accomplish, or that's a whole other issue. Whatever he's trying to do with Twitter right now, but like between the YouTube channel and the YouTube channel and Twitter, those two things have really been, that's what's really got my game accessibility consulting and advocacy work going and almost kind of thriving in a way. I'm super thankful. I'm super grateful. I can't believe the amount of opportunities that the YouTube channel, my Twitter account, and even to some degree my Twitch, when I did that pretty regularly for a couple of years. Professionally, personally, just general skill and confidence wise, because, once I started covering iOS games, that's where a lot of blind people were starting to find my channel. That's where the channel really started to grow, because the iPhone by that time was really catching on because of, hey, Apple was really the first one to really go all in and include accessibility out of the box. I mean, yeah, you had Mobile Speak and Talks for Windows Mobile, or Symbian and Windows Mobile, but those were separate programs that you had to buy, and they were good for what they were at the time. I used the heck out of them for years. But Apple including VoiceOver out of the box, and the fact that they turned I remember when the iPhone came out, we're like, there's no way this is going to be accessible. There's no buttons, there's no tactile anything. It's a flat piece of glass. How are you going to make this accessible to blind people? Not only did they do it, but they killed it. I mean, before then, I was really not an Apple fan. Like, and I still don't really care about the Mac very much. But I admit, like I said, once I tried the iPad, and I can maybe talk about that in another video. But I'm like, this actually works really well. So, like I said, that's where a lot of blind people, there were getting to be more audio games and more text voiceover games that were accessible. So we had that, and the channel was starting to grow. So blind gamers would see it. A few blind app and game developers would see it. Even a few indie developers would see it. And of course, we had people like Ian and, a couple of other people that I had either met through him or through other means, who started to see my channel and my Twitter. So like I said, I really tried to do better with doing a lot of my low vision spotlights, my accessible game spotlights. I started, again, I found another niche. Starting to cover virtual reality, the Oculus Rift, from an accessibility perspective, from a blind low vision perspective. Nobody was doing that. And I would probably argue that very few people are just still doing that because not a lot of blind low vision people have virtual reality because A, it's still pretty expensive, B, it's niche, and C, there is not a lot in the way of accessibility for virtual reality, but that's a whole other topic in itself. So I'm doing the YouTube channel. I started tinkering around with Mixer in like 2018. And like I said, blind game developers would start reaching out to me like, hey, I'm developing this game. Would you like to become a beta tester? Or I see your video. Would you like to cover would you like to cover this on the channel? I think that your viewers would like it, and it would help, it would help me get the word out there about my app or about my game. I would also hear things from sites like audiogames.net or AppleViz. Like there would be some announcement about a game, and they're like, hey, we're looking for beta testers. Okay, I'll sign up. Another one, I sent a support request email with some questions to Winston at the Voice Dream. Winston, who made the Voice Dream Reader app, one of my favorite iOS apps ever. And so we talked a little bit, and I actually met him at CSUN 2015 as well. I actually chatted with him um, in his hotel suite for about an hour and a half. It was really cool. Cool dude. And so I was beta testing for him off and on. I think I still do get beta invites every once in a while. So I was starting, like I said, I was starting to get noticed. I was reaching out to developers, and they were reaching out to me, not just games, but apps, games, um, audio games, voiceover games, PC games. Like if I noticed there was a PC game or something that was, or an iPhone game that was like, it's so close, and I can already see how I would make this more accessible to a blind player. I would reach out because I'm like, what's the worst that'll happen? They'll say no. And that's, um, we're kind of transitioning into what you need to be able to do if you want to get into technology accessibility, game accessibility, advocacy, consulting. The main thing is you have to put yourself out there. And I'm an introvert. I'm pretty. You may not know it as much as I babble on some of these videos, but like I said, I don't, I'm the kind of guy that'll just kind of sit there and observe and listen to things. And I like being by myself. I like, being alone where it's quiet. But if you give me something that interests me, it's some if I can actually make a connection with somebody that's not just fluff or just surface chit chat or small talk or whatever. Like as I'm recording this, I just did that video with Max um, the other day, and we just started talking, and we were just man, we were talking for a couple hours almost. So they said if you get something that's interesting, yeah, I can talk about it forever. And if that's what you're really passionate about, if that's what you really want to do, is get into game accessibility, you want to work with developers, or you want to do consulting work, you have to find a way to put your name out there. If you feel like you're a better writer, maybe start doing reviews of games. Start doing accessibility reviews. Put a simple website together. Hell, do a blog. Do it through a blog if you have to. If you if you do anything with video or an audio podcast, start doing that. There are free podcasting services. You can do a YouTube account for free. Um, a lot of people just use OBS like I am now. Um, you want to have at least a base level of quality, though. There's a lot of podcasts where especially like podcasts, audio podcasts, where for blind people, where the audio quality is all over the place. Like one time they'll be like holding their phone and you'll hear kind of scratching noises over their phone and like as they're kind of holding it in their hand and it's rubbing against their clothes, or there'll be like loads of background stuff in the just audio in the background. um you want to be in a quiet place. The occasional sound, of course, that's going to happen, but like, you want to be consistent, you want to be clear. Same with video. Um, and hell, like I said, if you want to do something like I do, even if you don't know anything about video editing, to this day, I've been doing this for 10 plus years. I don't know crap about video editing. I just basically get everything set up, hit record, and do a one take, honest, live, unscripted video. If you want to learn video editing, go for it. I mean, hey, I probably should learn video editing I should have learned it by now. Um, if you can do actual video editing and create polished videos, that's awesome. But if you want to do the freeform thing more like I'm doing right now, that's fine too. But you just have to present it well. And of course, when you start, when I look at some of my older videos, I'm like, ooh, that presentation style is a little bit rough. And there are still things that I hate about my presentation style. I still find myself stumbling over words sometimes more than I want to, or using certain phrases, like, basically. I mean, there's a half a dozen words or phrases that I catch myself doing, like, stop doing that. But you really just, like I said, just start somewhere. And you kind of have to put it out there somewhere. I mean, you can write for yourself to start, like maybe try writing a couple reviews or doing a couple audio recordings for practice. Do a couple of videos for practice and listen to yourself just to see how things go. But then, like I said, you have to put yourself out there, so that people can see that that's what you're doing. And you have to take it, you do have to take it seriously and put some thought into it. Not just like, oh, well, I tried this game and I booted it up and it didn't talk and, well, it was not accessible and that was terrible, so bad game. You have to have kind of a detailed, analytical mind, because if you really want to provide meaningful feedback, if you want to do consulting work, you have to kind of understand. You don't have to necessarily know how to program or code, but like if you that's where playing a lot of games comes into play as well, because I've played so many games over my lifetime that I know like what works, what doesn't, what I like, what I don't like, just from a general gameplay standpoint, a mechanics and fun standpoint, but then also what works for me and doesn't work for me as far as my vision goes. Um, what do I see well? What works for me? What doesn't work for me? Like some of the things that I look for in a game if I want to play visually, I want decent contrast. I want large enough text size. I want to be able to, if it's like a shooter, it's really nice to have a crosshair that I can see well. I don't like when enemies just super blend into the background. Um, Again, using the shooter genre, I don't like more realistic tactical shooters because, again, you're often trying to fight enemies really at a distance and they blend into the background. And in those types of games, it's more or less like you get hit once or twice and you're dead, just like you would in real life. Whereas more of like the old school arena or arcade retro shooters, like your Dooms, your Quakes, your all those types of things. Like you can take a little bit of damage, you're kind of a bullet sponge to some degree, and though that really helps me because in the realistic games, by the time I figure out where something's coming from, I'm dead. Whereas if I get pot shotted by somebody in one of these older school games, yeah, on a harder difficulty, I might die quickly too. But I at least have a chance to figure out what's going on before I die. Um, Menu narration now, because that's becoming a thing. Navigation assists. Like I said, I remember doing the Left 4 Dead video and talking very specifically about we need some way to help blind people navigate through a complex 3D environment. And I remember that was when Riley was up here. And I was still trying to think about how would that work. Like I knew it was possible, but I just didn't know how to put it into words. And then I saw The Last of Us do it. I saw other games do it at least visually. Because I talked about Fable and other couple games that have had like glowy arrows on the ground. Saints Row 3 and 4, Red Faction Guerrilla. But now that we've actually seen and played games that have it, we can pull from there. And just thinking about not even being stuck to those things. Think of your own original thoughts. Like I said, when I was doing that interview with Mad Max the other day, it was like, oh, he was telling me about a game that did some interesting stuff with their loot system, where it's like, oh, well, if instead of just saying that this does fire damage or ice damage or poison damage, if it does one of those things, we're going to write that text in red or blue or green, and you don't even have to necessarily read it to know, oh, okay, if I look at this section of the loot and it's in blue, oh, I already know that does ice damage. Cool. That's a really good idea that I really didn't even think of. So stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I would do the videos, keep doing my spotlight videos. And again, if you want people to notice you, especially if you're doing blog posts or you're doing podcasts and videos especially, you really, I think, want to do a regular schedule. Start simple. Start once a week. When I started, it was on Saturdays. And then I found I was having enough content where I could do Wednesdays and Saturdays. And then the whole Monday thing came in because I'm like, well, I don't want to take one of my Monday or my Wednesdays or Saturdays and put up a stream archive. So I said, okay, well, let's put our Monday streams on Mondays. Our stream archives from the past weekend, I'll put those up on the next Monday. And so now I'm comfortably doing 3 videos a week. And people know to expect usually 3 videos a week. And one of the things I also do is, like I said, I've got loads and loads of videos already recorded for games that I've played. Because if I get sick, if some technical issue happens, if I'm out of town, like if I go visit my parents or something for a week, I can be like, oh, well, let me just queue up a couple of videos for the regular days, and I don't have to worry. You don't even have to know that I'm gone, and I'll still have content on the regular days that people expect them. So that's getting your name out there. That's a big part of it. And you want to be, especially if you want to get into this professionally, even if you're doing a review, if you're doing coverage of a game, you have to present yourself professionally. You have to, even semi-professionally. Yeah, when I play a game and I'm doing a spotlight video, I'll crack a few jokes every now and again, or I will, something surprising happens, or I get really mad, so I'll cuss a little bit here and there. But again, I'm not going overboard. I'm not like some of these YouTubers that you see, they overact so ridiculously bad, and I can't stand that. I guess some people like that style, but I don't like it when people just purposely yell and overact and just are really derpy um, on their streams or on their videos. I mean, yeah, you don't want to be a robot, but you can put emotion into it and have fun, but be more realistic about it. And if you, yeah, I mean, if you do, you're comfortable, you're cracking jokes every once in a while. If you're, oh, you're playing and you slip out an F bomb every now and again because you're like, God damn enemy, whatever. That just shows that you're really getting, you're into the game. I mean, you don't have to cuss. I'm not saying that you should. It's just that's sometimes what happens. That's what I do. Um, but it's a balance, And if as you're giving feedback, again, you don't want to just rip into the developer. You don't want to be like, oh, well, this game is terrible and it's not accessible, and just really ripping them. Like I said, just read some of the posts that you hear on like audio games or AppleVis or just in general. I'm not even going to pick on the disability or blindness community, but like, have you read YouTube comments? Have you read Reddit posts or forum posts or anything? Um, some are okay, but man, people can be horrible. I mean, sometimes people have you read Twitter posts sometimes. And so, you don't want to be a kiss ass either, though. You don't want to just be like, well, I'm going to kiss your butt and I'm going to suck up to you because I want to get free codes and I'm not going to be a clout chaser. I'm not doing this because I want to build up my YouTube celebrity reputation or I want developers to recognize me so I can get a bunch of free stuff. But like when I do these, I do it because I want to help people. Yes, there's a selfish part of me that is saying I want these games to be more accessible for me because I want to play them, but I also want everybody else to play them. Like I said, I love games. Like I love Doom. Um, and when I was with Riley, it was a thing of she really got into it because she saw me playing it and she's like, this is really, really cool. I'd love to be able to play this. And right now we're really close to that point. I mean, again, as I'm recording this, hopefully version 6.0 of the Toby Doom mod is going to be coming out soon. And it's starting to feel and play really good. So, yeah, we're not together anymore, but it'll be interesting to see if she ever does get to try the game on her own. I mean, hey, or any other blind person is able to play um, the original Doom. Because I've been enjoying it for 30 years. And the fact that other people can still enjoy it now, I mean, like I said, mainstream games, they're still making GZ Doom games for retail to this day. Sulaco looks badass. We just had Supplice come out in early access recently. That's pretty solid. That's a good game. So Doom is still alive and kicking. But that's the thing is when you're given feedback, you got to be professional, you got to be detailed, you got to be kind of analytical. And what I found really does help is let's say that I'm going to be just contacting a developer out of the blue. If you have the skill to record audio, or if you have the skill to record a basic video, what I've done is there's a couple private playlists on my channel that you guys don't get to see, but I use for myself because I have like a tech support playlist, and I have that's the main one that I have. But like I could make like a game suggestion playlist or something. And when I encounter a game that I see has a lot of potential or that I have ideas for, or in the tech support playlist that I do have, I could say, hey, I'm trying this game and this feature isn't working, or this program, there's a bug here. instead of trying to, I will explain it in text because that's important so they can look at it and read it. But in addition to that, I will record a video of me playing the game or using the app or showing off the particular bug and explaining the way I'm talking to you right now. How is it broken? Why do I think it's broken? In order to make this fixed or in order to make this actually accessible, what needs to happen? It's like, oh, well, this feature, when I touch it with my finger with VoiceOver reads nothing or it reads gibberish. And I say, well, if the item was labeled, you can add labels to these items instead of it being this random number. You could say, make this the home button, make this the inventory button, or whatever it is. And I show them that, and then they see it and go, oh, that makes sense. And so I upload those videos to my YouTube channel, but I make them unlisted. So you can't see them unless I give you the link. And so I will write up a nice email to the developer explaining who I am, what I do. I am a legally blind gamer. I enjoy playing your game, or I'm a legally blind user. I want to use your app, or I'm trying to use your app, or whatever it is. And I also run a YouTube channel where I cover technology and games and virtual reality and other things from a legally blind point of view, perspective, whatever. And then I go into the whole spiel of what I'm contacting them about. Like, hey, I'm trying to play your game, and as a low vision user, I'm kind of able to play it, but there are some really problematic areas that are really difficult for me to see that are making it so I really can't play the game well or at all. And if I'm using VoiceOver or a screen reader on Windows or something, I'll be like, hey, I'm trying to do this, and this isn't working, or could this work? Or even if I'm not using a screen reader, even if it's just something they could change so I can play the game visually, I'm like, hey, I love your game. Let's say it's a shooter, a third or first person shooter. And I would say, well, I love this, but you have this tiny little laser pointer dot in the middle. That is really hard for me to see. And especially in a busy background where there's a lot of things going on, it's hard for me to see where I'm aiming. Could you add some options for other crosshairs, like, maybe a cross, a big circle? Give us the ability to adjust the crosshair thickness, size, color. These are things that would probably be pretty simple to do. It's not like adding a whole other accessibility layer. They already have a targeting system. They already have the laser pointer dot or the laser sight for your guns. So instead of just making it a laser, just having the ability to change like the shape, the color, the thickness, the size. Maybe it's a 2D side scroller and there's a lot of busy backgrounds, so it's really hard for me to tell what stands out from the foreground versus the background. I'm like, well, could you this is the problem. It's hard for me to see enemies or platforms that blend into the background in the foreground, so it's tough for me to play. Could you add an option? Could you add a layer in between all the foreground elements and the background where I can adjust the opacity? So I could still have the background, but I could set the brightness of all of the background stuff to 50%, 70%, 20%. Or I could make it opaque and just have, the platforms and all the enemies and platforms and my character, and just have a black background, like Eagle Island. And like I said, if you know of other games that do it, like that would be, if I was asking somebody about a platformer, I would say, hey, There's another couple games that I can think of that do this that I have played, and I might even link them to another video of mine. I'm gonna say here's Eagle Island, and here's a video I did covering its accessibility. So those are the types of things that you have to when you're contacting a developer. You want to be that detailed. Don't make them do all the work. Like they're gonna have to modify their game. They're gonna have to fix their game if they choose to. But also, you want to make it easier for them, because if they, it's like, oh, that's a good idea, but I don't even know where to begin. Like I said, that's why I spell out those ideas like I just did. I didn't do it in code, but I explained exactly what needed to happen, and they would go, oh, I think I would know how to do that. And then I would give an example to another game, and they could go buy and play that game or something, and be like, or watch my video and be like, oh, okay, let me look at this Eagle Island thing, and like, oh, okay, yeah, this is cool. You can dim the background, you can put little highlights around characters and enemies, platforms. Okay, these are individual things. I see how you could do that. Or here's a game that has crosshair options. All of those different types of things. And that's what I do. The other thing that I will do is, if I know that they're using a certain platform or engine, and I know that there's like, let's say they're doing an iOS game, I will Google the website for Apple's developer accessibility site, and I will include that in the email. I said, hey, I'm not a programmer, but I know that Apple has a lot of good information, resources, tutorials, guides on how to make apps and games accessible to VoiceOver or other assistive technologies, or just accessible to some of their tools that they have in their operating systems. And I will link them to the Apple developer website. If they're doing like a Unity thing, I'm like, oh, I know there's a Unity accessibility plugin right now. I will give them a link to that, so maybe they can incorporate that into their game. If it's, like I said, right now, I know both Unreal and Unity are starting to kind of try to put native screen reader support and accessibility into their engines, and I don't really know that they're that far in yet. But as that becomes more common, I will, and if it's available in a regular version of Unreal or Unity that the devs might be using, I will link them to those and say, hey, your engine that you're using natively supports these kind of things, so maybe could you try to incorporate some of these things? That's how detailed you can be. And if a developer reaches out to you and says, hey, I specifically want you to play the game, and I want you to provide specific feedback, let me know what works for you, what doesn't, ideas for accessibility improvements. Again, I refer you guys to that Diablo 4 beta video that I did recently. Go look up the Diablo 4 beta. I think I got to double check to make sure. I think it might be I think I put it in my game accessibility playlist as well. If not, I will try to remember to put it there, because it needs to be there. Because in that stream, I was just going to do a demo time video and just show people, hey, look at the accessibility of this demo, to get people excited about playing Diablo 4. But then, like I said, I was starting this whole growing up illegally sighted thing, and I thought, hey, people want to know about this stuff. People ask me this all the time. And so I said, well, let's do this live. It's not a stream, but let me just roll the video here, record the video. I'm going to play the game, and I'm just going to talk over the way that I would play a game and write down and document feedback that I will then send to the developer. And that's exactly what I would do. I would play around with I would move around the game environment, take notes. If I came up with something in the inventory and there was something really good that would, and again, point out the positives too. Don't just be negative. If they do something really well, tell them about it, because maybe it's something they can apply elsewhere. Maybe it's something that they can kind of adapt to another system that they're doing. Tell them what works well. Because, like, hey, you did this thing, and maybe you didn't think about it as far as accessibility goes, but maybe it worked really well unintentionally for accessibility, and that's happened plenty of times. So be sure to tell them that stuff too. You know, it's like, oh, I really like the way you did this because it's so easy to get in and out of this menu, or it's so easy to tell where I'm supposed to go because you did this. You know, write that stuff down too. Because then you're not just giving them this barrage of feedback that's like, dude, you know, I want to play your game, but it kind of sucks because I'm giving you 40 pieces of negative feedback. Um, put what you like in there. Put what you find helpful in there too, because they need to know that. So when I did the Diablo video, you know, whether it was menus or UI or inventory, playing the game, figuring out where I was supposed to go, seeing an enemy's attack or my attack or whatever, I would write stuff down that I would notice. And like I said, I'm not going to go into so much detail here, but like again, just go watch that video and you'll see the process and you'll see just my thoughts as I go. And you kind of see again how detailed that you probably should be if you really want to do it right. And give them meaningful feedback so that they can make the changes that you want or need. That's what you got to do. The other thing that I would say is up to this point, I've kind of looked at it from my own perspective. And I've looked at it from, okay, you're doing it from your angle. If you're blind, you obviously want it to be blind accessible. You want menu narration. You want navigation assist. You want a way to be able to make sure that you can get around the environment or know what's happening around you in the game, obviously. But so again, I'm low vision. So I not only look at a game from a low vision point of view, but because I also use some blindness technology, and because I know enough about blindness, total blindness, like I do a lot of things tactily or audibly in real life. So I will not just look at it from low vision. I will look at it and go, well, I know what kind of might work. And I've played, like I said, I've played audio games, so I also have that perspective. I know how to play an audio game and get around an environment via audio. So I have that extra skill to say I'm not just looking at this from my perspective where I can still see to play the game. I will include that feedback because if I want to play it visually, I will. But I will also extend that feedback to say, hey, if you really want to go all out and you want to make it so that someone with no usable vision can play this, here's what I think you would need to do. Here's what I think might work. And again, I would provide other examples. If it's a shooter game, provide them maybe some other videos I've covered that, or links to games that have done it well. If it's a platformer, if it's a racing game, whatever. Provide, point and click adventure. Provide example games that they can kind of revert to, or if there's nothing out there yet in that genre, just giving them those types of ideas that I talked about earlier. Those are all types of things that you can do. And the more that you can give feedback, not just on what you specifically want for yourself, if you can know, you don't have to know everything, nobody will. But I know enough about what is helpful for, I'm not going to claim at all. I'm not going to claim to be an expert, let's say, on deaf and hard of hearing. But I do know on a base level, if I notice, let's say that a game has no subtitle options, or if I notice all you can do is turn subtitles on and off. but I know it's a really story heavy game, or I know it's a really heavy action heavy game. Well, I know that in order for a person with a hearing impairment to be able to play that game, it would be really helpful to know who is speaking. So having speaker names, maybe having options for um, each character gets a different, each character name gets a different color, so it's easy to know. Subtitle size, having a background and being able to adjust like the opacity of the background so that the subtitles stand out. Not just dialogue subtitles, but like gameplay. There's a lot of games where, if let's say an action game where you're running around and it's not a cutscene, but you still hear story dialogue, or you still hear dialogue that might alert you to like, oh hey, there's an enemy up on the balcony, or there's a truck coming over there. Um, Stuff that would really help you that if you could hear. Um, so captioning of like events, or non-cutscene dialogue. Those are things that a person with a hearing impairment would need to be really to get the same information that someone who can hear the game would need. So I may not be able to give them much more than that, but at least that's a good start. And if they were interested in also exploring further down that pathway, refer them to reach out on Twitter or social media and ask, because, I said, and if you know a personal contact, maybe I've made a deaf friend or something, and I can say, oh, well, I know this person's really good, and let me refer you to him, or let me refer you to her. And then, then I kind of pass the torch, and then their expertise can help make that hearing part accessible, or, take controller remapping, or, mobility impairment, or cognitive ability. Like if you know even base levels of those types of things, that's why attending things like the Game Accessibility Conference is so huge. They're free. You can register, you can attend for free. Hell, there's what, 3-4 years of archived sessions for like the last 3-4 years of North American and European game accessibility conferences now. And it's still interesting. Like I said, when I go to the Game Accessibility Conference, I don't just watch the ones that are about blindness and low vision. It's really helpful to know. Like I said, there was in the European one that I just attended, there were ones on deafblind. There were sessions on deafblindness. There was ones on chronic fatigue. Just any number of different things. And so if you know those basic things. So let's say that you're brought in, they're not just asking for your feedback on like, oh, for blindness or whatever, but let's say that you actually get invited to a AAA studio, and they want to, you're primarily, like for me, they would obviously be concentrating on blind low vision, as they should. They shouldn't rely on me for mobility or hearing or other things. But if, like I said, as I'm playing the game, as I'm testing the game, as I'm working with the developers, I might notice a shortcoming in a certain area, or I might have an idea that would help in another area. And I can be able to tell that to them. And again, I can say, hey, this would be a really cool thing that would help this audience, or these people. And if you want more information, reach out, or here's a couple people that I know of that do this kind of work. Refer them to places like Able Gamers, or the Game Accessibility Guidelines. Again, that's another thing. Put links when I'm doing feedback or doing, sending that support or request email. I link to those types of things. Special Effect, Able Gamers, the Game Accessibility Guidelines, the Microsoft Accessibility Fundamentals course. And you really might want to have a document read, just a document, like a master document that you can copy and paste from. You have this master, and I need to update mine. I had one, and I really haven't done much with it, and I don't even know where it is anymore. I really need to make an updated master document and just have these links in there so that I don't have to go find them every time. I can go open this document and go, okay, here's the Android accessibility links. Here's the iOS accessibility. Here's audiogames.net. Here's the game accessibility guidelines. Here's Xbox guideline accessibility, PlayStation. Here's the Microsoft Accessibility Fundamentals course. And all I got to do is open up that document, pick and choose which ones apply to that game I'm trying to provide feedback on, and put it in my email along with my personal feedback. So, again, this is a long video, but the more I start talking about this, the more I am describing, not just my experiences, but as I start talking about what goes into it, these are some of the things that I do. And these are some of the things that if you want to kind of be taken seriously and start getting work, these are kind of some of the considerations I think that you have to make. It's not as easy as just reporting a game, just contacting a developer and saying, hey, I'm blind. Can you make your game blind accessible? And then hoping they can figure it out from there, because that's not going to happen. That's very rare that's going to happen. You got to be able to give them something to go from, basically. Trying to think. I mean, that really covers a lot of it. Like I said, know your assistive technology, know your mainstream assistive technology, have good writing skills. Please, for the love of God, don't use texting speak. Write in full sentences. Again, you want to be taken seriously. If you want to, especially if you want to do this professionally, and you want people to actually pay you for this, as I'm playing a game, I might take notes, and I might use like phrases or just a couple of note reminders. But before I send it off, I might take those notes and I might make a cleaner pass, and I'll maybe make it more full sentences, or at least easier for a game developer, not just myself, who can understand my shorthand. Make it easier for them to understand. I mean, write in full sentences. Spell check doesn't hurt. I understand if English isn't your first language, that can be a bit more difficult. But if you speak and write English, try to write it well, because I mean, I've seen people that are really smart. I've seen people write like grant applications. I've seen people write like letters and resumes and other professional documents. I'm thinking, how did you get this job? Because if I read that, I wouldn't have hired you at all. But yeah, I mean, if you want to be taken seriously, you kind of have to have this, even if you don't, you kind of try to fake a little bit of confidence. You don't want to be overconfident. You don't want to be an elitist prick either. But you have to have a base level of confidence, I think. And start networking with people. Like I said, attend CSUN if you can. Attend a game accessibility conference. They're awesome. Network with, follow if there's a company that you like a game company, a technology company, a website that you think they do good coverage, your favorite creators. Follow them. Follow them on social media. Subscribe to them on YouTube. Subscribe to their podcast feed. Maybe they'll follow you back. There's you get like LinkedIn. I do follow people that I've met, especially through professional organizations, like through some people that I've met through XR Access or through Microsoft or through, um, game accessibility work that I've done. I will follow them on LinkedIn because that's more of a professional social networking thing and a social networking service. So, every little bit helps. Um, I'm not going to say it was easy. I'm not going to say even that I know what I'm doing. This is just what worked for me. And this should give you an idea of how much effort I had to put in to even get where I am. And I'm not even to the point where a lot of other people are. Like I'm going to, I try not to compare myself to other people. Um, I don't yet, as I'm recording this, I don't yet have an official, like, I don't have a key game that I can tie myself to say, I made this accessible, or I was instrumental in helping to make this game accessible. I guess the closest thing that I could say to that, and I guess I could probably give myself some credit there, is I could say the Toby accessibility mod, because I have worked with Mr. Alan D1. I've worked with him off and on for at least 3-4 years now. And he's a cool dude. I love what he's doing. And I have probably been one of the major contributors to ideas and playing the games, playing the builds, giving feedback, giving ideas. And, sometimes my feedback didn't work. Sometimes it couldn't be done, or sometimes, we didn't go that route. But, good, bad, you got to try stuff. That's the closest thing that I've done. But like I said, I'm not doing it for clout. I'm not doing it for, I don't want to be the entitled person to say I'm entitled to a bunch of review codes, and so I can get all my gaming for free because I'm performing an important service. I mean, do I appreciate when a developer gives me a review code and I can cover its accessibility or evaluate its accessibility? Sure, absolutely. Um, but I don't want to be entitled. I don't want to expect, if a PlayStation or an Xbox comes out, a new console comes out, or like, yeah, would I have loved, especially with the coverage that I do for virtual reality, would I have loved to get a PSVR 2? Hell yeah, I would have loved to. But I don't expect it. I'm not going to say that I'm entitled to it. Um, and, like I said, if that happens, count yourself lucky, count yourself fortunate. I've had a couple of really nice opportunities. I was in a study a couple of years ago. The reason I got my PS5, even when I did, when that thing was impossible to find, I got contacted for a study um, that wanted to know. They were doing some research on new console accessibility. And it just so happened that I got that system through that project as part of my compensation. And I'm very, very grateful. I didn't expect it. Um, but heck yeah, I totally appreciate it. I count myself very lucky on that. Most of, like I said, 95% of everything that I've covered on my channel, I've paid for. I might have gotten it on a sale. I might have gotten it in a bundle, but, or I paid full price. But most of what I have, I bought. And so if I do get a review code or even some hardware or something, I'm very grateful for that. But that's sort of what's involved in getting into game accessibility consulting and advocacy work. Sometimes people reach out to you, and I forgot to mention, doing the presentation things. Not only have I attended either in person or virtually several game accessibility conferences, um, but like I said, I made that connection after that CSUN talk with Ian, and Ian since he has not only um, invited me to be a panelist twice at the Game Accessibility Conference. He has put my name out there for people who are looking for someone with a low vision disability because they're looking for feedback. I have been suggested by him or by others. He gives me heads up sometimes, or like I said, not just him, but other people that I've made connections with. Like they've given me like, hey, somebody's looking for doing a study on XR accessibility, VR accessibility. Hey, I know this person really does some virtual reality stuff, and so I've got opportunities from that. That's how I learned about XR access. So it's part networking. Huge part of it is networking. A huge part of it is putting in the work. Do the writing, do the podcast, do the videos, do something. Create, if you are a programmer, create a simple game. Create an audio game, create a text adventure, create something. Do something with a mod a game if you have that skill. Because the more you do, like you have to prove, you can't just say that, like, I can't just say, yeah, I want to help make more games more accessible. You have to be able to, on a base level, put your money where your mouth is and be like, this is what I can offer you. Just like if you were applying for a job, this is my experience, this is what I do, and this is how I think I can help you. But that has kind of been my experience. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I really missed as far as my story goes. I mean, like I said, the YouTube channel, between YouTube and Twitter, and even a little bit of Mixer, I can't tell you the opportunities that have opened up. Going to a couple of conferences, going to CSUN, doing my ID24 presentation on VR accessibility, going to Game Accessibility Conference. But just doing the YouTube channel, like I said, I've gotten interviews, like, and maybe you want to be a guest on a podcast or a guest on a video series, go for it. I enjoy it, actually. I've been on several like I have a presentations, podcast, and interviews playlist. Check that out. I've been on several other people's shows and podcasts, or have done text interviews for people writing magazine articles or something, or website articles. I look at that thing that I did with the Tobii Accessibility mod for Reload Magazine. That was freaking awesome. I have my name in a print magazine now. It's on my shelf. It is sweet. That was kind of a cool, proud moment last year. And this year when I got the physical copy. But, yeah, I think that really about covers it. I'm not pretending to be the all expert in everything either. Like I said, this is what's worked for me. This is my approach. This is the type of work that I have chosen to put in, and that I feel as I've gotten more opportunities, it's what has worked. And even, I've learned a few things of what doesn't work. So, this is kind of what I think does work. And, I'm just really grateful for all the opportunities. And even when starting the YouTube channel, I didn't know if I was even going to continue it. Just like a lot of people start a project and then it fizzles out after a couple months or a year. 10 years later or more, I didn't think I'd still be doing it. I didn't know if I'd still be doing a YouTube channel. I didn't know that it would afford me the opportunity to start getting into my childhood dream, even if it's not my primary career. I have a whole second career now of being into working in the games field like I always wanted to. No, I'm not programming games, but I'm definitely involved in them, and I'm helping make them more accessible and available to more people, and that's awesome. It's a great feeling. Um, I've met loads of great people. I've made lots of great connections. Um, I wish it would have worked out, but I mean, I found a girlfriend for a while. That I couldn't have guessed in 1,000 years, but thankful for that happening. But like the amount of opportunities, personal, professional, um, and who knows, the next 5 years or so, who knows what'll happen. Um, I'm excited where game accessibility is going. Just the fact that we have at least, at minimum, 2 game accessibility conferences per year, 2 days each, thank you very much. When I went in person, it was a 1 day conference. And we have accessibility sessions at DICE, the GDC, Game Developer Conference. More mainstream sites are covering it. I mean, look, we've had, like, I remember seeing, as I'm recording this, literally yesterday or the day before, I think it was yesterday, they broke the news about the blind accessibility for the new Forza game. That's hit mainstream news, like, not even gaming websites, but like tech news or just mainstream news in general. It's kind of crazy. Go Brandon, you know? But yeah, I mean, I'd love to. If that happened to me one day, I couldn't even imagine how I would feel about that. Like, dude, I not only did I help make a game more accessible, but now people really get to know about it, and it just like knowing this, like, oh, all these news sites are covering it, and so many people are gonna know. Like, even if you're like, you might have a relative that's blind or something. It's like, hey, there's a racing game you might be able to play now. Like, you could tell your blind friend or your blind sibling or relative. That would be really a cool thing. But I think I've rambled on enough, as usual. Um, I figured this was going to be a long one, but I really wasn't quite sure what path it would take, where it would go. But I really hope this recorded, because I'm very happy with the way this episode turned out. And I hope it answers a lot of questions that people regularly ask. So when people email me or tweet me or give me a comment in one of my videos and say, how do you get into game accessibility? How do you get into consulting work? How did you do it? This is where to look. I've got a video on my day job stuff. I've got a separate video on just how I got into YouTube itself, that I've recorded, that I don't believe is quite unlocked as I'm recording this right now, but so I think I've got a lot of the angles covered. And where did I, how should I? Those are kind of the 3 questions that people regularly ask. And so I hope that these videos are able to answer those questions at least the best that I can. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Share it, like it. Follow me on Twitter at BGFH79, twitch.tv/IllegallySighted, IllegallySighted.com, and right here on YouTube. So until next time, I will chat with everybody again later.